Hey, what is going on, Frag fam? I hope you all are doing well today. Elliot here. Welcome back to The Fragrance Well. For today's video, we are going to focus on a very revered form of fragrance in the entire fragrance world, not just Fragcom. That's going to be Rose and Oud Fragrances. I am a huge fan of the Rose and Oud fragrance DNA, and I have got a handful of fragrances here to kind of illustrate my love for that. But I will say this much: if you know anything about Rose Oud fragrances, they can get a little bit repetitive in a collection. That being said, there's literally enough of them on the marketplace to make an entire collection of nothing but Rose and Oud fragrances. But again, it can get a little bit redundant, so that's why I've only got 6 for today's video, because as many Rose Oud fragrances that I've gotten my nose on, many of them are very similar to what I already own. And if I'm gonna buy a Rose Oud fragrance, it either needs to be done in a way that is completely different from what I already own, and it's also something that really intrigues me, or if I'm gonna buy something that's similar to what I already have, it needs to be significantly better than what I already own for me to buy it. So therefore, that's why I've only got 6. With all that said, if I'm gonna spend my money on Rose Ouds, I'm gonna make sure it's something that adds something to my collection without creating a ton of redundancy. Now, if a fragrance brand wants to send me one, that's a different story, but that's neither here nor there. So again, I got 6 Rose Oud fragrances here. If you're a fan of Rose and Oud fragrances, this is a video for you. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Before we do, as always, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do like this content, and please hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so these are in no particular order. They're not necessarily ranked, but I will say that the last fragrance on this list is absolutely, by far, the best Rose Oud fragrance I have in my collection up to this point, so stick around. To kick it off, we got one from Mason Francis Kurkdjian, and that's going to be Oud Satin Mood. This is the X-Rate in particular. Mason Francis Kurkdjian, Oud Satin Mood. So that shouldn't be a surprise. I know there's many fans of this fragrance that watch my channel and pretty much are in Fragcom. It's not exclusive to my channel. And let me tell you, if you're like me, this was the fragrance that introduced me to the Rose Oud style, if you will. Let me know if anybody knows if there was a Rose Oud fragrance that came out before Oud Satin Mood that maybe popularized the style of fragrance, the genre of fragrance in the Western world, because I do not know. But anyway, yeah, this is the one for me that introduced me to it. So this was very high up on my rankings, if you want to call it that, in my cabinet in terms of the style of fragrance and just in fragrances in general, until I got my nose on other stuff. It's kind of fallen by the wayside scent, but you know what? I still got a lot of respect for it, and I still enjoy the fragrance DNA. This one here definitely has more of a jammy kind of rose to it. It's very much a westernized oud for the most part. It does have a slight kind of medicinal quality to it, but very much westernized. None of the funk that sometimes comes along with certain types of oud. It's not hay-like, it's not barnyard, it's not fecal. There's quite a bit of spice supporting this one. Loads of vanilla, loads of sweeter accords to make it that much more likable, and a lot of people love it as a result. And you know, I should point out, while westernized ouds do not quite capture the magic of the more traditional Rose and Oud fragrances, that's not a knock on them. It's just a quality that I think helps to introduce the style of fragrance to a world that normally would not have those kind of smells associated with it. And then if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it, like I have, you can discover those more traditional ouds and rose fragrances. So once again, from Mason Francis Kurkdjian, this is Oud Satin Mood X-Rate. All right, next one's going to be coming from Tiziana Terenzi. This here is Nero Oudh. Tiziana Terenzi, Nero Oudh. So this is, once again, a Rose Oud fragrance. There is some saffron in this as well. Saffron, oud, and rose is kind of considered the trifecta, or at least that's what I've called it. But I didn't really want to focus on the saffron too much. I'm just going to focus on the Rose Oud because I have fragrances on this list that do not have saffron. But anyway, this one does have saffron, and I will admit, at least right now, it's a little bit screechy. It does come off a little bit screechy when you first spray it on, but this Rose Oud fragrance also has, I would say, kind of a clean, fruity kind of rose. There's a lot of other aspects to the scent as well, so rose is not necessarily the dominant floral factor here, but you definitely get oudy-like characteristics to it. I'd say it's a little bit smoky, but also kind of in the background, blending with other woods to not make it too forward, if you will. And for that reason, I say this is a little bit of a westernized oud as well. But yeah, there's other spicy elements to it. Again, like I said, a little bit smoky. I get a little bit of a leathery facet as well, which you can get from saffron anyway. For me, the magic of this scent is in the dry down. That saffron kind of screechy facet that it has certainly calms down as the fragrance starts to dry down, and then you get more of like the ambery characteristics mixing with the woody characteristics of this scent. Smells excellent in the dry down. This fragrance certainly has its fans. People place it very high. I talked about when I first got it how I probably could have done without buying this, because I first got my nose on this a long time ago when I first discovered Rose and Oud DNAs, but I wouldn't really consider this the greatest one now. But you know what? I'm still glad I got it, because frankly, when I wear it, I actually enjoy it. But in terms of a ranking, if I were gonna rank it, this would rank lower on the Rose and Oud style of fragrances, but still a really nice one. So once again, from Tiziana Terenzi, this one here is Nero Oudh. All right, next one's gonna be coming from Arabian Oud, and just a heads up, 3 fragrances on the list are Arabian Oud. This one here is Resala. Arabian Oud Resala. Now for me, I would say that if you were looking for a fragrance done in more of the Middle Eastern style in terms of Rose and Oud, and well, there is saffron in this as well, just FYI, but done in the Middle Eastern style, and you want one that kind of introduces it in a way that is affordable, which this one is on discounters, by the way. This is a good one. Also, this one is quite gourmand. It's very chocolatey. It's kind of a rose oud and chocolate fragrance. Saffron is in there, and I will say that this one, the saffron, is definitely very, very screechy. Like in the first 15 minutes of the scent, that can be a little bit off-putting. However, the longer I've had this, I notice it's not as bad. So I think it's one of those things where you kind of just need to let the fragrance macerate for a little while, and then that settles a little bit and is not as overbearing as when you first get it. But when I first got this, it was rough in the first 15 minutes, but then it dries down to this very rich rose oud chocolate combination, and the chocolatey facets of this are quite strong, and matter of fact, to me, they kind of overtake the oudy characteristics. So this one also would rank a little bit lower because I don't get as much of the oud, but it's definitely there. But yeah, this is a very simple scent for that matter. It's basically saffron, rose, oud, and chocolate. And I would imagine there's probably some patchouli helping to give that chocolatey facet in here. But yeah, this one here is definitely one of those like delicious fragrances that has its fans. Great for a date night. If you don't overspray it, the fragrance is strong. And also just evening wear in general. If you want a more of a sexy rose and oud combination, this is a good one to go with. So once again, from Arabian Oud, this one here is Resala. All right, so the next one is also from Arabian Oud, and we've got Tarteel Gold. Arabian Oud Tarteel Gold. Now this one here kind of reminded me of Resala, but it has some other elements to it to make it a little bit more complex, and also it's just a lot smoother overall than Resala is. So for this one, it does have gourmand facets to it. It does have saffron, it does have rose, it does have oud. In my opinion, those 3 elements are very similar to Arabian Oud, but for me, the saffron is nowhere near as screechy in this one. You also have some musky and vanilla characteristics. That's what kind of lends this to being slightly gourmand as well. And it still has a representation of oud that is not too barnyard, not too funky, not too screechy. It just adds this oriental characteristic that just captures the magic of rose and oud in a fragrance. And also, I forgot to mention in the intro, if you are new to rose and oud fragrances, you're just gonna have to get your nose on them, because if you've never smelled it before, it's really, really hard to describe what a rose oud fragrance is. Once you kind of get your nose on them, you can start to understand them, and then if you want to explore them more, you can do so. But yeah, this one is just a smoother iteration of somewhat of what I think Resala is trying to capture without the chocolatey aspect, but it still has yummy gourmand facets to it, and it's just smoother overall. Really, really do like this stuff, and I consider this a more mature, slight upgrade to what Resala is. So once again, from Arabian Oud, this one here is Tarteel Gold. All right, guys, the next one's coming from Bond number 9, and this here is NoMad. Bond number 9, NoMad. So another particular style or subset of a rose oud fragrance is a fruity one, and this one here is quite fruity. Very, very fruity with a very jammy rose with a lot of sweet notes, so tons of vanilla, very ambery in nature. And while there is oud here, it is what I would consider to be a westernized oud because there's no funk whatsoever, and then it is very much in the background compared to the overwhelming sweetness that this fragrance has. This one has, I think, pear and quince in it. So if you like rose and oud fragrances and you like pear also in fragrances, might be worth checking this one out if you haven't already. Also available on discounters now. I love throwing that out there. When I first talked about this scent, it was not available on discounters, but it is now. And also, yeah, if you just like that fruity characteristic in a rose and oud combination, this is a good one. Very jammy rose, as I mentioned before. And again, if you don't like the oudy characteristics to be too forward, this is a good one to check out because oud is very much in the background but still present. You can still experience it in this scent. So once again, from Bond number 9, this is NoMad. All right, guys, the final fragrance for this list, also from Arabian Oud. This here is Royal Oud. Arabian Oud, Royal Oud. All right, listen, this is one of those ones when people say there's levels to this stuff, this is one of the ones that sets the bar at the top. This is truly top tier rose and oud and musk. So that's literally all that's in it. Rose, oud, and musk. The particular type of oud listed is Cambodian oud, and I have a few other fragrances that have Cambodian oud. That's definitely the case here. The characteristics of that, which you could say is, if you spray it really, really heavily, it can have a slight animalic touch to it, but it doesn't typically stick around. A little bit of a resinous and sweet, but also woody characteristics to Cambodian oud to my nose. And Arabian Oud does use Cambodian oud a lot in some of their more oudy fragrances. Rose here is just this kind of perfect blend of the many facets you can get from rose, where you get the flowery aspect of it, but you can also get a little bit of a fruity aspect, a little bit of a lemony fresh aspect to it. Don't really get much of a green aspect to it, but it's just very, very balanced in this scent. And then the musk accord is just heavenly. It just softens the scent overall. This stuff simply smells majestic. It is regal. It is absolutely insane. I first got my nose on this scent about a year ago, and the first thing I remember thinking when I smelled this is that, you know what? This is why some people say Oud Satin Mood is not that great in terms of an oud rose fragrance. Now, I'm not knocking it. I think Oud Satin Mood serves its purpose in the fragrance community, but when you smell something like this, if it doesn't automatically become lesser of an oud rose fragrance, not just a fragrance overall, but I'm talking about an oud rose fragrance, then you just don't appreciate what oud and rose scents are, and especially from a quality standpoint. This stuff here is top tier. I'm sure there's some fragrances that run laps around even this, but this is definitely a top tier oud rose fragrance. If I was gonna tier these off or rank them, this would be the only A tier on the list, because the other ones just do not stack up to this one. Trust me. Well, you don't have to take my word for it, but I'm just saying. Those who know, know. So once again, from Arabian Oud, this one here is Royal Oud. All right, guys, that is gonna do it for today's video. If you are a fan of rose and oud fragrances and you like the ones I listed and also have some that I didn't list them down in the comments below. I'm pretty sure that some of you guys have your hands on a great rose and oud fragrance that I don't have in my collection. That's probably way better than what I even talked about, and I would love to see what it is. So put it down in the comments below. Thanks again for watching all the way into the end. I really do appreciate you guys. Please remember to be well and smell well, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.